New Zealand has the highest rate of domestic abuse per capita in the developed world. Abuse needs silence to thrive. In this series, Simonne Butler, herself the survivor of a vicious attack that nearly took her life, meets those brave enough to break their silence. These are their stories.
If someone has said that they're going to kill you, believe them. They will. It might not happen today, it might not even be this year, but it's on its way.
Simonne knows this because 16 years ago she was helicoptered to hospital after her boyfriend tried to murder her. The story made national headlines at the time, but for all the wrong reasons. Much of the attention focused on the attacker, not the survivor.
When we stay silent, we give the user of violence an added level of power. And so when we break the silence, you're actually breaking some of that power. Now, I didn't understand that back then, but I do understand it now.
Having reclaimed her story, she's sharing it with others. Today, that means talking to a group of police who want to better understand the experience of domestic abuse survivors.
I didn't see the sword, I just remember the flashes. He wanted me to bow, to kneel down and bow so he could chop my head off nicely into the washing basket, which I refused to do. And I was screaming and he kept swinging at me with the sword and I put my hands up, trying to block it, trying to stop them getting my head. They spent 27 and a half hours sewing me back together. I was so lucky that they were able to put me back together and I didn't know it. So when I woke up from my coma in the hospital room and found out that my hands had been sewn back on, I was so happy.
Miraculously, she now has some use of her hands. But the hardest thing to recover from was the cycle of abuse.
The psychological violence wore me out so much more than the physical violence did. And the psychological violence took me so much longer to heal from. You know, this is 16 years later since I got out of this relationship, or since I got picked up in a helicopter and flown out of the relationship. You know, he would follow me everywhere and I was never allowed to go anywhere by myself. I was 21 when I met him. He stalked me for about 6 months and I didn't know I was being stalked. So he would be parked next to my spot at the supermarket and I'd get there and go, oh my goodness, like fancy meeting you here.
But once in a relationship, it didn't take long for his obsessive behaviour to escalate into violence.
There were times when he punched me in the face on purpose, but most of it, he would do it specifically so that people couldn't see where my bruises were or how bad I was. And every time he hit me, every time he raped me, every time he did some sort of psychological damage, I lost a little part of myself. It's like a little part of myself just slipped away, and a little bit more and a little bit more, until really I was just a shell going through the motions, a very numb shell. I didn't reach out to anybody, and I didn't reach out to any of the groups or any of the organisations that can help. I didn't think that they were for me. I had so much shame. And I had pride too, you know, so I didn't want to admit. I was living in denial about how bad my life was.
In her pursuit to make sense of the past, Simonne visits a women's refuge. She speaks to Sanjita, the refuge manager.
Majority of our women that come in, there's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of self-blame because they've been told it's their fault.
Yeah.
It's your fault. If you hadn't have done this, I wouldn't have hit you.
I lived in that
Yes.
space. It took me a long time to be able to deal with the shame. It really messed with my mental health.
Yes.
Yeah, ridiculously so.
Well, I'd say a big proportion of the women that come into refuge, and like you, myself, I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I've been through 8 years of violence, so when I look at this world, it's all very real to me, and we see it every day when we're working with these families. Emotional abuse, isolation.
Sanjita is talking about the power and control wheel, a tool which helps women identify and articulate their experience of abuse. For many women, seeing it for the first time is a revelation.
The foundation of the wheel is the physical violence and sexual violence. So, you know, when you put a label on it and then they're able to reflect on it, they can go, oh my gosh, that was happening
Every day.
Every day.
Yeah. When I was in an abusive relationship, I'd never seen anything like this. And I think it's really important for women to understand that there are so many different types of abuse and that what they may be experiencing is actually abuse. You know, the behaviours that are going on within their relationship are about power and control.
The power and control wheel illustrates what abuse is, but not how it starts. In most cases, that cycle begins in a previous generation. That's why Simonne wrote a book about her past.
My mum was in a violent relationship when I was about 7 or 8. It was really scary, and we were both threatened not to call the police, and that stuck with me, you know, that you're not allowed to call the police. And I saw my mum being abused, and I thought that I would never be abused. She would, you know, she would sense the tension, and then she would be sort of on edge and trying to make peace and trying to sort everything out, walking on eggshells, you know, modifying her behaviour to appease this man. And years later, I did exactly the same thing.
Recovering from the horror of her attack and what led up to it took a long time. Not only did she write a book, she got help from friends.
Hi.
And tried different kinds of therapy.
So it's a bit of time for some horse therapy.
I've been thinking just about how much horses meant to me in my life.
Been a huge part of your journey and your healing.
They really have.
Yeah.
Hello, my darling. Hi. Hi. I guess more than anything, horses really helped me to know that I was allowed to take up space, and that and to be assertive, you know, to stand my ground, because a horse, they constantly stand their ground. They don't worry about what other people are doing. They're like, this is where I am and I'm allowed to take up space. And that was really helpful for me. I am trying to extract all of the lessons from the pain so that now I can use my experiences to help other people. Healing is a super personal journey. You have to do it with courage, and it takes determination and it takes strength.
Statistics show that our tiny country has the highest rate of family violence in the developed world. But Simonne's had enough of statistics.
My hope is that just one woman watching this sees this and realises that she needs help and that she can't handle the situation by herself, and that she reaches out to somebody and asks for help. My deepest wish is that that woman be safe.